Archer Aviation stock has dropped 17% in just the past week. Now, a lot of growth stocks had a pretty rough week on the market, and the start of 2025 really hasn't gone well for some of those speculative stocks that had really great ends to the year in 2024. So, what is going on with the company? Why was there this big drop last week? And what does the future look like? I'm going to dig into some of this today. This is a stock that I haven't added yet in either asymmetric investing. This is a stock that I don't own yet, but as we start to get to the point where the company is actually going to launch aircraft, they have more and more military contracts, that backlog continues to grow. It's a much more compelling company at a current $4.4 billion valuation. That definitely could get diluted over time, but I think the asymmetric potential for Archer Aviation is pretty strong. If they're able to succeed in actually getting these aircraft off the ground, a lot of potential growth avenues. My name is Travis Hoium. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they'll give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. So let's get to the news of the past week. And the first thing is just the stock move. You can see that over the past week, shares are down about 17%. If we pull back to the past month, they're up 25%. So very, very volatile for Archer Aviation. I was a little bit surprised that even given this momentum since November, shares are only up 73.5%. That's a huge number, but for a lot of stocks that are up 100%, 200%, that kind of fall in this very, very speculative territory, I was surprised that number wasn't even higher. Now, valuation may or may not look attractive depending on how operations actually turn out over the next few years. So this is again where the stock could easily fall 50%. Or it could jump 100% in the next 6 months. We just don't know what the market sentiment is going to be. What we do know is that their class structure is going to be a little bit simpler as of the end of 2024. So this will impact their reporting in 2025. These SEC filings are pretty dry, but this one is actually pretty important. And what this basically says is that there was a provision that outstanding Class B shares would convert automatically into A shares if at any point Class B stock represented less than 10% of the total number of the company's shares outstanding. During fiscal year 2024, this threshold was met. Therefore, on December 31st, 2024, B shares turned into A shares. What sort of impact is that going to have? It really just changes the voting power. So B shares had 10 votes per share. A shares had a single vote. So there was basically a block from a voting perspective from those B shares. That no longer exists now that they're all just A shares. And then as you would expect, all outstanding options and restricted stock were also adjusted from B to A shares as a result of this change. This isn't a huge thing, but it's one of those weird overhangs that you often have with a company. I remember back in the mid 2000s when Chipotle went public, they had A shares and B shares. That was related to when they were primarily owned by McDonald's. And it came with some of the shares having a 10-to-1 voting rights. The strange thing in that case was that those shares actually traded at a discount to the other shares because the other shares were more liquid. So these different share structures, I think, end up working against companies, even though they're trying to do something like allow the founders to maintain control of the company. Just do your job, do a really good job, and you're not going to lose your job as a founder. I think that's kind of the thing we should look at. The other thing was that JP Morgan downgraded Archer Aviation stock, and that was in part because the company has not received full certification for its aircraft. Now they're moving down that path. This is from their recent earnings report. Since the FAA finalized Midnight's airworthiness criteria in May, we are now completing phase 3 of the FAA's certification process while continuing to rapidly advance in phase 4. So yes, it's true that that certification is not completed yet, but something that's probably going to be coming in 2025. That's at least what the company has planned, because commercial air taxi operations are hoping to be launched later this year in Abu Dhabi. That's something that where the infrastructure is starting to be built out, and they're going to have commercial air taxi service in Abu Dhabi. Joby Aviation, their competitor, is going to be building out something similar in Dubai. So that's really where this stuff is going to be launching first, not in the US. But obviously that certification is going to be important. The other thing to keep in mind with Joby Aviation is they have a massive and growing order book. The order book is now over $6 billion. That was as of the end of the third quarter, when that third quarter release came out. And that's everything from airlines to the US military buying aircraft. Now, since that release, the company has completed its construction of its high volume manufacturing facility. That's a 400,000 square foot facility in Georgia. Tooling is already moving in. They're expecting to begin production early this year, so we'll get some more updates on that. And Stellantis is potentially going to be the manufacturer, contributing capital, advanced manufacturing technology, and expertise. So looking for 650 aircraft annually by 2030. That's a pretty rapid ramp, but if they're able to do it, obviously, this is a pretty undervalued company given that potential growth. On top of that, and I think this is one of the things that's more intriguing to me, is a strategic partnership with Anduril to develop a vertical takeoff and landing military aircraft. And they did that on top of raising another $430 million. So you have more and more capital coming into the business and these important partnerships like Anduril. Anduril's building what I think we can think of as an operating system for the military. And then they're going to want to, using an API, plug in a whole bunch of different assets, things like aircraft. So especially if these are eventually pilotless aircraft, this is going to be the kind of partnership that is going to give Archer and Anduril more and more scale with the military. Might be the kind of partnership that isn't going to bear a lot of fruit for the next couple of years, but 10 years down the road, this could be a very, very valuable partnership for the company. Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. Now, it's hard to value a company like Archer Aviation because they're not really generating any revenue right now. So you just have losses and expenses. That's what the financials look like. But that order backlog continues to grow. By the end of 2025, I think we should reach commercial operations or at least certification for their aircraft. And that's when you could potentially get to the point where you're starting to generate revenue. You're starting to see what those unit economics look like. They're going to have the benefit of being able to run something like an air taxi service, do that itself, and see what those ongoing costs look like and those operations look like, and sell aircraft to other operators as well. So I like the business model. I like the potential for this vertical takeoff and landing industry. It's definitely high risk, but potentially very, very high reward because there's so many use cases. This is not just making a small private aircraft. It's not just making a commercial aircraft. There's a ton of use cases in this kind of cross between a helicopter and a traditional aircraft. So we haven't even seen what those unlocks look like, whether you're looking at the military or whether you're looking at personal or commercial transportation. I think there's a ton of opportunity for Archer Aviation. That's what makes this a compelling stock. Want to see continued steps in the right direction. First of all, getting that certification done. Like I said, that's what JP Morgan brought up. But that's not something we should expect from as investors right now. And once that certification gets done, now you're starting to have those dominoes start to fall. I think you want to own the stock before those kinds of things happen, because that's when you start to see real momentum, when people actually see these things in the sky. So intriguing. So I'm actually more bullish on Archer Aviation after the stock has started to pull back. Like I said, haven't bought any yet, but definitely on my short list for 2025. But let me know what you think of Archer Aviation today. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you here next time.